Before Tron, before Touchstone, and way before Disney bought Star Wars, there was The Black Hole, a bold, bizarre space epic that quietly made history. Released in 1979, it was Disney's first real dive into dark science fiction, and it's way stranger than most people remember. With floating robots, eerie deaths, and some truly wild behind-the-scenes stories, this film pushed the limits of what Disney was willing to show. Here are 15 weird facts about The Black Hole you probably never knew. Number 1. The lead actress was recast and had to chop off her hair. Originally, Jennifer O'Neill was cast in the lead role of Dr. Kate McRae, but early into production, she clashed with the studio, especially over one specific request. They asked her to cut her long hair for the role. O'Neill refused. Whether it was about her public image, personal style, or just studio tension, she walked away from the film. Disney moved quickly and brought in Yvette Mimieux as a replacement. Mimieux agreed to the drastic haircut, and if you watch closely, her sharp bob is pretty unique for a Disney heroine. Especially in 1979, it gave her a more serious, clinical look, which actually fit the tone of the film better than a typical flowing fairy tale style. It may seem like a small, behind-the-scenes drama, but that casting switch changed the tone of the character. Mimieux's performance ended up being one of the film's most grounded elements, all thanks to a haircut no one wanted to talk about.
Do you remember what we were talking about the other day? We want to get out of here.
I'm staying. Shh.
Reinhardt is a murderer.
Number 2. Disney's most expensive film at the time. In 1979, The Black Hole was Disney's biggest gamble, and its most expensive movie ever made. The studio poured $20 million into the production, a massive budget at the time. To put that in perspective, Star Wars, 1977, had cost around $11 million. So yeah, Disney went all in. But it wasn't just the budget, it was the risk. The Black Hole marked a sharp departure from Disney's usual family-friendly brand. This movie had death, philosophical weirdness, and a tone closer to 2001, A Space Odyssey, than Snow White. Executives were nervous, but after the success of Star Wars, everyone wanted a piece of the science fiction boom. The pressure was high. Disney had never tackled a space epic before, and this was their shot to compete in a genre they'd mostly ignored. The sets were huge, the models were detailed, and the visual effects? They were cutting edge for the time. In the end, the movie made back its budget, but just barely. Still, for Disney, The Black Hole was a statement. They were ready to play in the big leagues, even if it meant getting weird. Number 3. The director beat the robot design with a baseball bat. You know that terrifying red robot Maximilian? The one that floats around like a silent executioner? Well, he wasn't always so creepy. In fact, his original design looked kind of clean. Too clean. Almost friendly. Director Gary Nelson hated it. When he saw the early clay model of Maximilian, he thought it looked way too polished. So, instead of asking the designers to fix it, he grabbed a baseball bat and started beating the model himself. Seriously, he literally took a swing at the thing, bashing it until it had dings, dents, and jagged edges. And that brutal redesign stuck. Maximilian ended up looking like a tortured, silent enforcer. Cold, violent, and intimidating. His final look became one of the most iconic parts of the film. It's fitting, too, because later in the movie, Maximilian literally impales a man to death with his spinning blades. In a Disney movie, yeah, but that eerie, disturbing look? It all started with a director, a clay model, and a baseball bat.
How do you know my name?
You were monitored ever since our sensors first detected you. Now, Maximilian, calm down. Don't pick on...
Number 4. When sci-fi confused Robert Forster and literally shocked him.
All right, Vincent, let's make this one an end run. We'll catch them in a crossfire.
Forster played the calm and steady Captain Dan Holland, the kind of science fiction hero who keeps his cool even when facing sentient robots and a journey into the unknown. But here's the strange part. Forster wasn't a fan of science fiction at all. In fact, he later admitted in interviews that he didn't fully understand the movie, especially the ending, which takes a surreal turn with heavy religious and metaphysical imagery. He basically said, "I just did the job." But it gets even weirder. During filming, Forster was reportedly accidentally electrocuted when a malfunctioning effects rig sent a shock through the ship's controls. Right as they were shooting a scene, the zap was real. While not seriously injured, the shock clearly caught him off guard. Still, Forster, ever the professional, laughed it off and kept going like nothing happened. So here's Robert Forster, acting in a science fiction movie he didn't really get, getting shocked by a spaceship for real, and still delivering a rock-solid performance. Now that's commitment. Number 5. The robot sidekicks almost stole the show.
We have to go.
No, I can't make it. My hover stabilization's gone.
While the film had big ambitions about space, time, and the nature of the universe, let's be real. Most people remember the floating robots. Vincent, the polite floating genius, and Bob, the beat-up old-timer with a southern drawl, added a quirky charm to an otherwise intense movie. And weirdly, they were fan favorites. Disney clearly hoped these droids would become the breakout stars of the film. Vincent was designed to be cute and clever, a kind of spiritual cousin to R2-D2, but with a calm, know-it-all personality. Bob, voiced by Slim Pickens, brought some much-needed warmth and comic relief. Their dialogue is full of one-liners and wisecracks, which stood out in a film filled with tension and dread. Behind the scenes, these characters were technical challenges, puppeteered and rigged with complex wirework to float and emote on screen. But they worked. Even today, if people talk about the black hole, they're often remembering those two oddball robots. They weren't just sidekicks, they were the heart of the movie, and probably its most merchandised characters too. Number 6. Disney fired a sci-fi legend on day one. Before the black hole had its final script, Disney brought in outside writers to help shape the story. One of those writers was Harlan Ellison, a legendary science fiction author known for his bold ideas, sharp wit, and, well, total lack of filter. Ellison was famous for writing The City on the Edge of Forever for Star Trek and had a reputation for pushing boundaries. So, Disney thought, let's see what he can bring to our space epic. Bad idea. According to Ellison himself, on his very first day at Disney, he was having lunch in the commissary and joked loudly about an idea for an X-rated animated film starring Disney characters. Not exactly family-friendly. Unfortunately for him, Roy Disney was within earshot. By the end of the day, Ellison was out. Fired. One of the shortest-lived gigs in Disney history. Whether the story is 100% accurate or a touch exaggerated, it's classic Ellison. And a bizarre footnote in the making of The Black Hole. One of science fiction's sharpest minds. Cancelled before he even typed a word. Number 7. There was a deleted romance no one talks about.
It's a big adventure story, but there are undercurrents of interest and romance. Oh, it's definitely a science fiction, but it's of a magnitude.
For a movie with killer robots and cosmic theology, The Black Hole was surprisingly quiet on human emotion. But here's the weird part. There was almost a romantic subplot, and Disney just cut it. In early versions of the script, and in scenes that were reportedly filmed, Dr. Kate McRae and Captain Holland were supposed to have a budding relationship. It wasn't steamy, but it was there. Shared glances, hand-holding, subtle tenderness amid the chaos. And then, it vanished. The romance was edited out of the final cut, possibly to keep the pacing tight or maintain the film's cold, eerie tone. But in a rare cast interview, a clip of them holding hands was actually shown, proving the scene existed. So while the finished movie has zero love story, the characters were originally supposed to connect, emotionally, not just professionally. It's a small but strange example of how The Black Hole was constantly shifting tone. Part science fiction epic, part horror movie, part almost love story? Disney said nope. Romance? Deleted. Number 8. The moment Disney grew up and got a PG rating. In 1979, The Black Hole quietly made Disney history. It became the first Disney movie ever to receive a PG rating, marking a dramatic shift from the studio's safe, G-rated comfort zone of talking animals and fairy tales. This film was different, darker, more serious, and way more intense than audiences expected from Disney. Characters died. There were disturbing visuals, including a robot murder scene and an eerie funeral for a machine. The tone leaned more toward 2001, A Space Odyssey, than Peter Pan. Even words like hell and damn made it into the script, a big deal for Disney at the time. But that PG rating wasn't just a one-off. It was a test. Disney was beginning to experiment with more mature content, years before launching Touchstone Pictures. the label they'd eventually use for grown-up hits like Splash and Dead Poets Society. So while The Black Hole didn't set the box office on fire, it opened a black hole in Disney's identity, pulling them into deeper, weirder, more adult storytelling. It wasn't just a science fiction movie. It was a warning shot for what was coming next. Number 9. The score was the first ever recorded digitally. The Black Hole didn't just push boundaries in visuals, it made history in sound too. The film's sweeping, eerie soundtrack, composed by the legendary John Barry, was the first score in motion picture history to be recorded digitally. That's right. Before CDs, before MP3s, before digital was the norm, The Black Hole was already ahead of the curve. The music was recorded using an early digital system from SoundStream, making it a pioneer in audio technology. This was a time when analog tape was still the gold standard, so going digital was a bold move. Barry's score matched the film's tone perfectly, moody, mysterious, and grand. It gave The Black Hole a sense of weight and seriousness, and it's one of the reasons the film still feels atmospheric today, even if the visuals feel retro. The digital recording may not sound shocking today, but in 1979, it was groundbreaking. In a film all about black holes, advanced tech, and the edge of the unknown, it makes sense that the soundtrack itself was exploring new frontiers. Number 10. Psycho's Anthony Perkins gets one of Disney's darkest deaths. Yes, that Anthony Perkins, the guy who played Norman Bates in Psycho, is in a Disney movie. Weird enough, right? But even weirder? His death scene in The Black Hole might be the most violent moment in Disney history at the time. Perkins plays Dr. Alex Durant, the brainy, idealistic scientist who's slowly seduced by Dr. Reinhardt's vision. Everything's tense, until Maximilian, the silent, red floating death machine, suddenly lashes out. With zero warning, Maximilian drives his spinning blades straight into Durant's chest, lifts him into the air, and sends him crashing to the floor. It's brutal, shocking, and completely unlike anything Disney audiences had ever seen. There's no music sting, no fade to black, just cold, robotic murder. In a movie that starts with a classical overture, the casting of Perkins was deliberate. He brought gravitas, but also baggage from his horror legacy, making his character feel both smart and a little unstable. And that death? It cemented The Black Hole as a turning point in Disney's tone. When Norman Bates dies in a Disney movie, you know things are getting weird. Number 11. The original release included a musical overture. If you saw The Black Hole in theaters back in 1979, you might remember something strange. The movie didn't start right away. Instead, it opened with a long, slow musical overture. No visuals, just black screen and music. This overture, composed by John Barry, was a classic old-school touch, meant to give the audience a moment to settle in before the film began. It was a nod to earlier epics like Ben-Hur or 2001: A Space Odyssey, which also used overtures to set the mood. But here's the weird part. Later home video releases cut it out entirely. If you watched the VHS, DVD, or some streaming versions, that overture was either shortened or removed altogether, making it one of those lost moments from the theatrical experience. The music itself is moody, ominous, and totally fitting for a film about falling into a literal void. It's not action-packed, it's slow and haunting, which kind of warns you this isn't your typical Disney ride. So if you've only seen The Black Hole at home, you might not have seen all of it. Number 12. The novelization and comic changed the ending. The ending of The Black Hole is one of the strangest in Disney history. Surreal, symbolic, and almost dreamlike. But here's the weird twist. The novelization and comic book adaptations changed it. In the movie, we see Dr. Reinhardt seemingly merge with his robot Maximilian and descend into a hellish landscape inside the black hole. Meanwhile, the heroes pass through a glowing, cathedral-like tunnel of light, almost like a version of heaven. It's abstract, unsettling, and left audiences scratching their heads. But in the official novelization, the ending is more straightforward. Reinhardt dies alone, the black hole collapses, and the crew escapes through a white hole, a theoretical opposite of a black hole, into a new galaxy. The comic book version takes it even further, with clearer narration and less religious symbolism. It seems like Disney couldn't quite decide how to end the story. Science? Spirituality? Something in between? The movie chose ambiguity, while the books opted for explanation. So if the film's finale left you confused, just know, you weren't alone. Even Disney's own tie-ins had to fill in the blanks. Number 13. It was one of Disney's answers to Star Wars. When Star Wars exploded in 1977, Hollywood went into full-on space race mode, and Disney didn't want to be left behind. Enter the black hole, their first major attempt at riding the science fiction wave that Star Wars kicked off. Disney had actually been developing the black hole for years under the working title Space Station 1. But once George Lucas changed the game, the studio shifted gears. They added more action, darker themes, and tried to push the boundaries of what a Disney film could be, hoping to catch the same lightning in a bottle. The result was different. The black hole didn't have the swashbuckling pace of Star Wars, but it made up for it with brooding atmosphere, eerie visuals, and a haunting score. It didn't become a cultural phenomenon, but it showed Disney was willing to take creative risks to stay in the game. So while it didn't dethrone Luke Skywalker, the black hole still deserves credit as Disney's first real stab at competing in the galaxy far, far away. Number 14. The merch rollout was way bigger than the movie. Like any good science fiction movie released after Star Wars, the black hole came with a full wave of merchandise. Disney had big plans. Action figures, playsets, model kits, storybooks, puzzles. You name it. They were hoping Maximilian, Vincent, and Bob would become household names just like Darth Vader or R2-D2. Toy companies like Nego and MPC jumped in to produce figures and ship models, and Disney released everything from lunchboxes to coloring books. There was even a board game. But here's the thing. While the movie found a cult audience, the toys didn't take off. Kids weren't as drawn to the darker, more philosophical tone of the film, and the merchandise mostly sat on shelves. Today, many of those original figures are collector's items, not because they were loved, but because hardly anyone bought them. It's one of those classic what could have been moments. Had the movie been a bigger hit, the black hole could have launched an entire toy empire. Instead, it became one of Disney's earliest lessons in how tricky the science fiction market could be. Number 15. One scene used over a dozen effects at the same time. The black hole might not be remembered as a massive box office hit, but behind the scenes it was a technical marvel, especially when it came to visual effects. In one jaw-dropping sequence, the filmmakers layered 12 different photographic and optical effects on top of each other in a single shot. That means models, matte paintings, motion control camera work, star fields, animated lighting, and more. All done by hand, years before CGI was the norm. This wasn't just complicated, it was groundbreaking. To pull it off, Disney had to shut down almost every soundstage on the lot. The entire studio was practically transformed into a special effects lab for over a year. Coordinating those effects took massive planning, multiple departments, and endless test footage. While some of the visuals might feel retro now, at the time they were pushing the envelope, earning the film an Oscar nomination for visual effects. In many ways, The Black Hole laid the groundwork for Disney's later VFX-heavy projects. It wasn't just a science fiction movie, it was a visual experiment on an industrial scale. From robot sidekicks to digital sound firsts, The Black Hole is still one of the strangest science fiction experiments ever put on screen. Which of these weird facts surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more deep dives into cult classics and forgotten movie oddities.